It is time for Unlocking the Vote for people who are justice impacted. If you've been impacted by the criminal justice system, what are your rights? Next up, we are unlocking the vote for people who are justice impacted. Please welcome to the Global Black Economic Forum stage, Dr. Topeka Sam, founder and CEO and visionary, Topeka K-Sam Ventures. Also, national consultant, Voter Justice Project, Desmond Meade. CEO, The Clean Slate Initiative, Sheena Meade. And author, advocate, and motivational speaker, Dr. Angela C. Wright. Please give them a warm welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon at the Global Black Economic Forum for Unlocking the Vote for Justice Impacted People. How many people in the room, by show of hands, are justice impacted?
Nobody.
What I mean by justice impacted are people who have been impacted by the criminal legal system. So whether yourself have been incarcerated, or you have a loved one who has been incarcerated, or you even know someone or work in the system, that's why we say justice impacted. And our voting rights matter. More often than not, people think that because you have a conviction that you cannot vote, and that is far from the truth. And so today I'm joined on the stage with these lovely experts who will help and explain the things that we need to know as it relates to having our rights restored, talking about some of the barriers that we face being incarcerated, and what we had to do either to get our rights back and or what we need to do in order to engage in the civic process. So I would like each of my speakers to please share a little bit about yourself and your journey. I say a little because we don't have a lot of time, and all of us love to speak. So I'll start with Dr. Wright.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Dr. Angela C. Wright, and I am formerly incarcerated. I served 14 years in federal prison as a first-time nonviolent offender. However, that did not deter what my life is based to be, right? So anything that you have been through does not stop you from where you're going or your destiny. Right now, today, I do help justice-impacted people. I help young people as well to overcome barriers. I am the delusional queen, right? I believe that anything is possible with God, and I walk that out every day.
And she does. That's right. Thank you. And Dr. Sheena Meade.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Sheena Meade. I lead the Clean Slate Initiative. We're a national organization that focuses on automatically clearing people records. So in the United States, there's 1 out of 3 people that have an arrest or a conviction on their record. That's 70 to 100 million people that has been impacted by the system. But over 30 million people are eligible to get their record cleared. And there's a lot of barriers to doing that. So we've been successful in passing legislation in 14 states and DC, allowing 18 million people to second chances. And so really excited to talk about that. And I'm also just as impacted as well.
Thank you, Dr. Sheena Meade. And Dr. Desmond Meade.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Desmond Meade, most famously the husband of Dr. Sheena Meade. I am formerly incarcerated, formerly homeless individual that lived in Florida and who's managed to just turn my life around and attain a few degrees and a law degree, as well as lead a movement in the state of Florida to re-enfranchise or restore voting rights to over 1.4 million people who had previously been convicted of a felony offense. And so my work has been to empower those people that's been impacted by the justice system and unlock potential in our communities through empowering them.
Thank you. Now, when I say Dr. Meade, see, there's 2 Dr. Meades up here, but I just want to underscore, and I think it's important for everyone to hear, all 4 of us are doctor in our last name, and all 4 of us are justice impacted. So that's something also to show, right, that because we've been justice impacted, formerly incarcerated, that, as Dr. Wright said, that there's nothing that we can do or can't do. But for the sake of this particular conversation, we're talking about voting and unlocking the vote. Just to give a little bit about my own personal experience, when I came home from prison in 2015 and I was put on federal supervision, I was told by my probation officer that I could not vote. And at the time, I believe it was President Obama was running, and I wanted to be able to vote. And so I was doing my research, and I was told that I could actually vote because I was being released from federal prison, and New York state laws were a little bit different. And so I went back and I asked the chief probation officer, and I went to their website for the U.S. District, Southern District of New York, and it actually stated on their website that I could vote. And I was so upset because I said, well, wait a minute. People are going to your probation officer to get this information, but yet and still the information that's being provided is untrue. And how many people are now can't vote or don't vote because they just think that they can't, right? So I'll start with Desmond and then work my way down. Dr. Mead, what would you say when you were doing your campaign on voters' reenfranchisement in Florida? What's the most difficult thing, and also what was the most passionate place that when you were able to have victory in Florida did you see?
Well, most difficult was actually convincing people that they had the right to vote, you know, and then the importance of the vote. And what I found was that there was a lot of people that were saying, oh, I don't have time for that, my vote don't matter, or I can't vote, whatever. But when we pressed a little deeper, what we found was that people who were apathetic to voting or who was against it or talking bad about voting were people who thought they couldn't vote to begin with. However, when they found out that they could, then that changed the whole dynamic, which leads to the most passionate experience I've had was a lady who was actually given like less than 6 months to live. And her dying wish was actually to be able to get the vote in the 2020 election. And unfortunately, she passed before she had that opportunity. But that moment had impacted me because she could have wanted anything else in life, right? But to think that her dying wish was just to get to feel what it felt like to be a part of something that was bigger than her.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And Dr. Sheena Mead, in your work with the Clean Slate Initiative, what do you find are some of the barriers that people face because of their criminal convictions, but also why voting is important as it relates to this process and specifically around Clean Slate and the work that you do?
Yes, so the work at the Clean Slate Initiative, you know, when we get people's record clear, it doesn't necessarily automatically like trigger them being eligible to vote, and sometimes people get that confused. In a lot of states, people never lose the right to vote, and so that's the thing we need to continue to educate people about.
Can you say more about that?
Yeah, so, well, Desmond actually. Now I got to pass it back to Desmond. I got to reclaim my time, but go ahead. Desmond could kick in here.
They're
Claim my time
approximately,
in a
that's why
minute.
we work good together. You know, there are 2 states in which you never lose your right to vote back. And every state has some kind of hodgepodge. There's a hodgepodge of rules that guide this. But for the most part, the majority of the states in the country would restore voting rights back immediately after a person has completed their sentence or off probation. In the state of New York, for example, if you're not incarcerated, you have the right to vote. And Michigan is like that too as well.
In Vermont, I think.
Vermont,
right?
yes.
And Maine.
And so now nationally, there are over 9 million people like us who think they cannot vote that are not registered to vote because, you know, just lack of information.
Thank you, Dr. Sheena Mead.
Yeah, so right now, people who have an arrest or conviction, there's over 44,000 collateral consequences, barriers for people to be able to move on. It could be an occupational barrier. I remember like Oklahoma a few years ago, a woman that got released from prison who was doing hair while she was incarcerated came home to get a job as a hair washer, and she could not do that. She was restricted because you have to have an occupational license to wash hair during that time. Could you imagine? And so, yeah, so one of the things is when I was working on a campaign with Desmond, he was my boss at one time, y'all. Pray for me. But he was my boss at one time in the household and outside the household. But during that time, and he would go out and try to get people, you know, energized about registering to vote or about the initiative. And folks would say, yeah, I know, I care about voting, I know that's important, but I can't get housing, I can't get a job, and I can't get my education, and I need to be able to feed my children. And that always stuck with me. So when I started doing the work of Clean Slate, that's what stuck with me. And I used to tell folks, in order to change those policies that bar you from getting education, access to housing, you got to be able to let your voice be heard in a voting box. And so that's how that correlate. If we want to change policy, we got to be able to create power by making sure that we're voting.
100%. Dr. Wright, we talked a little bit about that. about some of the barriers and things that you have faced when you came home and why you do the work that you do and why it is so important for people to know their voting rights and that they do vote. Can you share more about that?
Yes, so in Georgia, you're able to vote once you have served your sentence, including your probation. You have to be off of probation, right? So as Dr. Sam was saying, her probation officer told her that she could not vote. Let me tell y'all something. People will always tell you what you cannot do. No one runs to tell you what you can do. So in order for us to unlock the vote, first we have to unlock the power what's within. And what is that power? Not being scared because somebody said that you cannot do nothing. So my probation officer, the barrier was I was offered a job coming first home. It was $55,000 a year. This was 2021. He told me I couldn't take the job because it required me to be around other felons. The job he wanted me to take was in a warehouse, which I would still be around other felons. So instead of me listening to him, I asked him, how do I get you back in front of the judge? He like, oh, is that something you want to do? I absolutely want to do it because if I don't stand and fight, then everybody else behind me continue to fall. So I took him back to court and I explained to the judge why I felt like I should take the job. Needless to say, I got the job, but it was because I was not scared to go against the system. You have to be willing, and as Dr. Mead was saying, like people tell you that you can't do something or you don't know. If you don't try to find out, you will never know because nobody's going to tell you. So the most important thing about barriers is continue to fight. Y'all, our forefathers didn't get down in that dirt for us just to sit around and listen to what somebody tell us we cannot do.
That's right. And that's where the advocacy piece comes in. And that's why it's so important not only for us to advocate for ourselves, but all of us, we advocate for our people. Because if we don't vote, then our judges, our prosecutors, people who are running our school districts, they will have control and continue to have control and not do what's beneficial for our communities and our people. And so from any of you, just thinking about that piece specifically, when you were able, one, is everyone here now able to vote?
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a beautiful thing, right? Considering all of our journeys, right? So when you were able to vote for the first time, each of you, what did that feel like post your conviction and post all the things?
So I have a different spin. I never lost my right to vote because I had adjudication withheld in a misdemeanor, you know.
Can you share what that means?
Yeah, I had a lower offense, so I never lost the right to vote. In Florida, I didn't lose the right. But the thing that did impact me, in 2016, y'all, I ran for state office to be a state legislator. And during that time, my husband was on the ground helping me, you know, with my campaign. And we went to a straw poll. Y'all know what a straw poll is. You go to like a fake vote in like the Chamber of Commerce. You get to do a vote. And Desmond was all excited, but I think it was a moment that someone asked Desmond, are you excited about voting for your wife? He about to cry. He asked, are you excited? And then he had a moment.
It's all right, brother.
He had a moment that he realized that he wasn't able to vote for me. And so that was really kind of a moment for us in our family that, you know, we're doing all this work around democracy and stuff like that, but Desmond in 2016 was not able to cast a vote for his own wife, and I couldn't have my husband cast a vote. So I tell people I lost by 1 vote.
Jesus. You know, and when I used to talk to people, especially old timers, about voting back in the civil rights era, and they talk about how voting was a family affair. And, I mean, families got dressed up in their Sunday best and went to the polls. And that was always a conversation at the dinner table. And then I realized that through the years, what happens when you strip mom and dad of the right to vote, you killed that conversation. And I had never got that opportunity until 2020, right after we won the right to vote in Florida. And I remember just thinking about the fact that this was the first time I actually got to take my family with me to actually go vote. But as I was walking up, I started thinking about my ancestors and how they went through hell. They went through what I call a gauntlet of death, right? Because they were threatened, their lives were threatened, and they had remnants that reminded them, like people hanging on trees. They left them hanging to remind my ancestors, you better not go register to vote, right? And so they had to walk through that to go register to vote and then come back home. Then they had to walk through it again to actually go and vote. And what I thought about was how many lives were lost and how many people were bitten by dogs and sprayed with fire hoses, right? Just so people like me could have the right to vote in. And I thought about the blood, sweat, and tears that people had given, right, for these rights. And the thing that hit me was, because I asked myself, why would they do that, right, for me, right? And I understood that what I was doing was something bigger than just something political. I know people find it hard to believe, but voting is less political than what people think it is. And so when I was in that booth and I realized that I was walking on hallowed ground, right, because of the lives that were lost, I understood that I was engaging in something that transcended politics. It transcended the partisan nature. It transcended even the implicit and explicit racial biases, that I wasn't necessarily voting as a black man. I was actually voting as a human being, not a Democrat or a Republican or whatever, but I was actually engaging in an act that basically said, I am. It affirmed my existence in the society, and it affirmed my worth, right? It said that I am somebody and I can make a difference. And that was above everything. It was above everything, and I finally understood that's why my ancestors was willing to lay their life down. They didn't have the perfect candidate. They didn't have the perfect political party. They wasn't going to benefit from that, right? So they died, or they was willing to risk their lives so we can have an opportunity to move it forward, to move the needle forward. And so I understood that what I was doing was actually putting some respect on my ancestors' sacrifices, and put some respect on their name, because not voting would be like saying that they died in vain.
Right.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That was so powerful. Dr. Wright.
So at first, like I said, in Georgia, you cannot vote until you're off probation. So once again, the girl that does not take no for an answer, I went back to court again and told the judge that I feel like I've served my sentence. I served 14 years. I don't need to be supervised by somebody when I'm doing the right thing. And the judge went with me, and I was able to get my sentence terminated early. I didn't have to serve the 5 years probation, but when I went to go vote that first time, mind you, I checked everything. It said that I was good. When I got to the poll, they told me I had been out the system too long, that I just wasn't even in the system anymore. So I was discouraged. I was upset. I'm not going to lie, the hood in me did want to come out. But instead, what I did was make sure everybody else around me that could vote did vote. So it's important, even y'all, that people will believe that your vote doesn't matter. Your vote does matter. Your vote counts. So if you have to get Betty Buck Dog and everybody else in Sue to go to the poll, that's what you do. If you can't go, you get somebody else to go, because it's not just the presidential election, guys, and it's not just the midterms, but it's our county, our commissioners, all of those elections count. So you have to spread the word and be proactive. And now, me and my partner, we make sure we go and tell everybody in our family. We even put it in a group text, and I ain't gonna lie, sometimes we cheat and tell them, y'all better vote for this person.
Most families do. But thank you so much for sharing that, Dr. Wright. When you were bringing that up, it made me think about when I was incarcerated, and I was pre-trial. And I was pre-trial, and I was about to do my plea. And the judge says to me, you do know that you're about to, you'll lose your life rights on voting. This was in Virginia. And in my mind, I'm facing 20 years at the time. And I was like, well, why do I care, right, about voting when I'm looking at 20 years before I could, if at all, again. But at the same time, when God spoke to me, it was like, no, you know what? I said to the judge, I said, well, guess what? If I can't vote, then I'm going to make sure that I get 10 other people to vote for me. And when I think about what we're doing now, and Desmond, we talked a little bit about that too, how you were able to get the Amendment 4 passed, because it is about, if you don't know your rights, right? Or even if you've heard from everyone on here how important voting is and why it matters. And if not for you, it matters for the people who made sure that we had the right to vote. But what we also did here is that right now, if I don't know my voting rights, or I'm kind of still on the fence about it, that get other people to vote for you. Make sure, because if all of us, what did you say, 70 million people, 80 million people now have a right? 90 million. Now it's 90 million people that have a conviction in this country.
1 out of 3 people, and I only seen a few people raise their hand, and data don't lie, so y'all don't got to testify today,
Right.
but there's more people in here that have an arrest or conviction.
I was gonna ask at the end, sis.
Yeah.
I figured since we came out, maybe everybody
yeah,
else
I'm going.
would, right? But I think we only have a few more minutes left. One, I would like everyone to share how everyone can get in contact with you if they want no more information. And also before that, though, share what you're up to right now and how people, what is the call to action?
Okay, so you can find me at The Real Free. That's at The Real Free, and free is spelled PHREE. I have a podcast, which is Break Free Podcast. Follow it too. If y'all don't know, everything that I do and I say is about freedom, because God did not give us a spirit of fear. He gave us a spirit of what? Freedom, love, and a sound mind, right? So I push everybody that's around me, anybody that I come into contact with. I believe that we all have a superpower within us, but if we don't exercise our superpower, it lays dormant, and we'll just go for anything that anybody tell us to do. So concerning the vote, y'all, go out, learn more, educate yourself, drag people to the vote. I remember, when you was at home with your parents when you was young, they said if you hang out on Saturday night, you still got to get up and go to church on Sunday morning, right? I'm telling you, if they live in your household, kids, and they old enough to vote, make them go to the vote, y'all. We have to begin. If we look and we think, oh, this not working in our favor, or that's not working in our favor, it's not working in our favor because it's not enough of us doing the work. There's only so many of us that can do it. But if we do it and we encourage others to do it, we can get through and we can see things because we do have the power.
Thank you.
So in 2004, in Florida, I was a single mom living on government assistance, raising my children. And to make the story short, I went to go get food for my children. And I needed some cash. And back in the day, I think everybody's around my age in here, we used to write this thing called checks. I wrote a check, and I wrote it for the amount over, living on faith that they wouldn't cash the check until Friday, even though I was putting it in on a Wednesday or whatever day it was. That check bounced and got returned, and 2 months later, I got 2 cops knocking at my door, arresting me for a check that was returned for $87.26. Till this day, my slate is not clean. That record still shows up. Desmond and I was just looking for a house recently to rent after we sold our house, and we still had to disclose our record and had to go through that anxiety of not being able to get approved. So what I'm up to right now, it's harder to do work in the South. The South is important. We're in Louisiana. I'm being intentional in the next few years to make sure that we could pass clean slate in half the country by 2031, and going to be intentional to come to the South. So that's my focus right now. We have over 14 million black people, 9 million black people that need their records clear in the South. So I'm going to be working on that. Y'all can find me at cleanslateinitiative.com. Please go on our website. Again, 14 states and DC have passed clean slate. So if you have a loved one that may have a record, or you one of the people that didn't raise your hand, check it out, because you may have already have your record cleared.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit on to that. What she didn't tell you was that over 18 million people have gotten their records cleared now because of the work that she's doing. Woo. 18 million.
I said
14 states.
I said it at the beginning.
She said
I
it
just
earlier.
need to make sure they know that, right? Because, no, so for me, I talked about, my journey where I came from homelessness, incarceration, addiction to drugs. What I didn't talk about was the triumph, right? And since passing Amendment 4, I've been named Time Magazine one of the 100 most influential people in the world, MacArthur Genius Fellow. I've been named Central Floridian of the Year, and in 2023, my organization, the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, was actually nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize by the same organization who nominated Dr. Martin Luther King. And as my wife said, in spite of all of those things, I still caught hell trying to get housing, right? I still was made to feel like I was less than, right? And so one of the things that I believe that I want to do One of the things that I wanted to do was make sure that people like me, people who've been impacted by the justice system, know that we don't have to settle for second best, that we can achieve so many things, right? And sometimes God takes us through these things to be of greater service to him. And so what I'm doing next is I'm actually started my campaign, and I'm running for governor of the state of Florida. Because I believe that if we can have a president that has a record, we can sure enough have a governor in the state that has a record as well. And so
Let's go.
anybody that's interested in finding out more about my campaign could hit me up on the social media platforms. It's Desmond Meade 44 or DesmondMeade.com is the website. I appreciate everyone's support.
What a powerful panel, right? Okay, so I'm going to ask that question one more time that I asked in the beginning. How many people that are here are justice impacted by a show of hands? Okay.
There's the truth.
There you go. There it
Let
is.
the church say amen.
And what I also say is that, again, everyone should have raised their hand, because even if you didn't think you are, right? Now, if you knew no one who was justice impacted, and we know that not to be true, at least now you know 4 people up here. And if you were sitting next to someone who raised their hand, then maybe ask them if there's something that they need, how can they help, or how can you get involved in what they're doing? Well, my name is also Dr. Topeka K. Sam. You can reach me across all social media platforms at Topeka K. Sam, or my website, drtopekaksam.com, to get involved in any of the multiple things that I do. But again, please vote. And if you're not sure, here are the experts to let you know what your voting rights are, and make sure that you bring 10 people, I'm not even going to say 1, 10 people with you to vote this electoral season. Thank you.
Betty Buck and the dog.
Thank you, Dr. Sam.